Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, an entrepreneurial elder emo who pulls duty as both a cat dad and guitarist of Orlando's own Felicity, Andrew. He's here to talk not only about Felicity's new album, Mixtape for the End of the World Volume 1, and their June 2025 tour with Fluorescence, but also his crush on an album that's inspired him in more ways than one, Homesick from none other than A Day to Remember. Andrew, how are you?
I am great. That was wow. What an amazing intro.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, before we dive into this album and all that jazz, can you tell people where they can find Felicity online?
Yes, we try to make it as easy as possible, so you can find us at the handle at We Are Felicity, or just whatever website / We Are Felicity. So WeAreFelicity. But we're most active on Instagram and TikTok, so come say hi to us there.
All right, we'll send them to TikTok and Instagram. I did lie a little bit. We're going to detour just a second before we get to the album, because first I'd love to know, has your musical taste always leaned towards the pop punk and emo scene, or did you start elsewhere in record stores like I did?
So I would say it started really with probably classic rock and then like modern pop from when I was growing up. I was definitely a classic rock junkie. Really just, I'm sure like a lot of kids driving around in my dad's car, my dad would be listening to classic rock. So my first love of music was really Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, you know, the classic rock realm, I would say. And then from there, the first like albums I ever bought was Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, and Sum 41, All Killer No Filler. So I would say like definitely like going into my older adolescence, definitely lean towards the kind of emo pop punk side. But really like started with classic rock, and I still also obviously love that to this day. But that, and I would include like nu metal. Like my favorite band for a long time was Limp Bizkit.
Oh yeah.
Throw that in there too, and I would say that's pretty much what, like, you know, scoped out most of my music taste.
I'm gonna assume your age is my age, or maybe, because those are all, I feel like Linkin Park, Sum 41, Limp Bizkit, it is in an era of time. It's a beautiful time as well. Yeah. I'm about to go to my 20th high school reunion, and I'm in charge of the playlist, and very hip hop heavy, the 2000s. So I am trying to get a little more hip hop in there, because I have like a lot of Limp Bizkit and Korn, and I feel like the other people aren't going to be as happy with it as me.
Totally, yeah, and like, you know, we come from the era where you could turn on TRL and it would be like, you know, a boy band, Britney Spears and Limp Bizkit and Eminem, like all in the same segment almost, which was a really cool time where I feel like there was less and less, like kind of everyone listened to everything type of vibe. It was less like kind of, I'd say like a lot of musical taste now. Most people lean to like pop, country, or hip hop or rock, but it's like not as much crossover as there used to be.
No.
But yeah, it was a cool era to be around for sure.
Yes, very lucky. And how old were you when you did pick up a guitar for the first time and thought, enough listening, I want to play?
So I started pretty young. I wouldn't say I started taking it very seriously, but I first decided I want to play guitar from seeing Back to the Future, and I watched Marty play electric guitar at the Chama Under the Sea dance, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And so I asked my parents for a guitar for Christmas that year. I might have been like 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so I got an acoustic guitar, and I was like bummed out. I was like, this isn't what I wanted. But they kind of made me start there, and I maybe just to, you know, save their eardrums. But I went to start taking like guitar lessons at like a local music store. And then when I got to kind of, I think later middle school, getting into high school, I convinced him to buy me an electric guitar, my first electric guitar. And then, you know, early in high school, I started a band, which was my dream, was to like be in a band. And so I had my first band while I was in high school.
And you said you discovered Homesick and A Day to Remember over a decade ago on Pandora. Was that your like go-to place for all things music back in the day?
I'd say in that period of my life, it was. I would think, Spotify was around, but it didn't have the kind of like radio and predictive features. It wasn't as, it was great for like if you knew what you were looking for. But Pandora was a great spot, especially back then where it was free and you could like start with an artist or a song and then just go on this journey. And I think the first song I actually heard was not from Homesick, but it was from What Separates Me From You, and It's Complicated, and I was like, that's still one of my favorite Day to Remember songs. But that kind of set me off on discovering that band, and I don't remember what radio station it was. It might have been like a My Chemical Romance radio or something like that, but I know it was kind of around that era that I first started listening to them, and it was right around the time Felicity started was when I discovered that band and really started taking them seriously. And so yeah, Pandora was definitely a go-to for me back then for discovering new music.
For me, it was those like record label commercials on Fuse. I remember a lot of the bands coming from there, and I could still like see the like not like the like old people like Celine Dion ballad ones, but the not the CD ones, but like for the record labels on Fuse.
Sure. I remember watching Fuse and seeing music videos that you like wouldn't be able to find any like on any other channel like VH1 or MTV, but I discovered like Trivium and Atreyu and Avenged Sevenfold all from like music videos on Fuse, and they all became like some of the biggest, most influential bands in the scene. But I remember just seeing them when they were first breaking on Fuse, and that was another spot I discovered so many bands, and like those three that are still some of my favorite bands to this day I discovered all on Fuse. That was another great spot.
Now we have so much to thank. I mean, Carson Daly, yes, for TRL, but Steven from Fuse for our adolescence. I saw him at Warped Tour the year Katy Perry was playing Warped Tour, and it was like, do we meet Steven or do we try to meet Katy Perry? We picked Steven.
There you go. Okay. Well, I mean, and in hindsight, might have been the wrong choice as far as a cool who you met story.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. At the time, we're like, oh, we'll see her again. She's not going to go that big. She won't go to space or anything.
For sure.
That. So, what about Homesick made in an album that you took mental note of in that moment back in the day? Where you're like, okay.
I think it was, I kind of discovered it a little bit after it had been out. It'd probably been out for a couple years. Because obviously, like, What Separates Me From You had been out as well. So it'd probably been out maybe 3 or 4 years. But what really set it apart for me was I had always been really into metalcore and heavier music, and then around that same time I was really getting into a lot of the newer pop punk bands like State Champs and Neck Deep, Story So Far, and I was really into 4 Year Strong as well around that time, and I felt like they kind of did all the things I loved about what all those other bands were doing, but they had this heavy element that the rest of them didn't, of really trying to blend like metalcore and pop punk. And if you listen to that album, there's songs that are straight metalcore songs, and then there's songs that are straight pop punk songs and ballads like If It Means a Lot to You. So Felicity, I'd say that's a big, massive influence for us, because we almost kind of do the same things. There's times where we have songs that could be played at a metal show and songs that could be played at a just a straightforward pop punk show. But I think they kind of sum up, like if you took every single Warped Tour band and combined them into one band, I think it would be A Day to Remember. And as someone who grew up obsessed with Warped Tour and wanted to go to Warped Tour and wanted to play Warped Tour, that's what kind of really drew me to them, was they had a little bit of everything, a little bit of like the Warped Tour buffet of heavy music and punk music and pop punk music and pop music. And to this day, they're still killing it in that kind of genre. And they were the first one I really noticed to do all of them at such an elevated level, and just like seamlessly just be able to bend from genre to genre. And Homesick is a perfect example of that, because their albums before that were definitely just on the heavier side, and that kind of opened up this new era, which I think influenced so many bands and kind of created that easy core kind of genre. I think Homesick was definitely like the birth of that, which is what drew me to that album so much.
Did you say you never went to Warped Tour?
No. I said I grew up going to Warped Tour.
Oh, okay.
I always
wanting
wanted to
to
play
go?
Warped Tour. Yeah,
Oh,
my
okay.
dream was always being a band that got to play Warped Tour. And so A Day to Remember is like, I think like the quintessential Warped Tour band. Not that they played it like every year like some other bands did, but they were like represented the scene in such a strong way. That Warped Tour scene is like a flagship band that represented like all the different genres that you could see at a Warped Tour lineup. So I think that's kind of what drew me to us. But I think I went to my first Warped Tour in probably 2011, and I went to every single one until the final full cross country one. And that year, I think I went to like 3 dates.
I went, my first was 2005, then My Chemical Romance Fall Out Boy
That's
year.
awesome.
And
Okay.
I think I went every year. I think I skipped maybe a few once we got to the 2010s just for financial reasons.
Mhm.
But then I did go to the last full cross country one, and it was a beautiful moment seeing the used clothes in my favorite Warped Tour spot, which is Ventura. And all my friends were done for the day. They went to the car, and I was like, I'm not leaving until I see the used. It's like the only band I really want to see. So yeah, as
That's
Warped. And I know you're getting Warped for November, so maybe you guys can jump on that.
That would be so awesome. We're waiting for like, an email or something come across, because that would be obviously be a dream. We have gotten to play it. I'm not going to say like the dream is dead, because we won the Battle of the Bands. I want to say like 2016 or 2017.
The Ernie Ball, right?
The Ernie Ball one,
Okay.
and it was the year they were having the winners play the main stage. So we
Oh,
have got to do, I think, like the best year they did that contest.
yeah.
So that was a dream, and I know it was in Orlando, and right after us was Yellow Card, I think. So there was like a massive crowd waiting for Yellow Card, and then we had our fans, people there to see us. So it was one of those 11. We were playing at like 11:20 a.m. and it was 100
Uh,
degrees already in Orlando, Florida. But it was like, not to be cliche, but a day I will always remember. will
I
be that
mean,
day.
of course.
Yeah, and that was an amazing lineup that year. I think it was 2016 and 2017. But I just remember that lineup was so insanely stacked, and was one of the last true like awesome cross country lineups back until they ended it.
No, I know they're doing it this year, 3 days, but I do hope for the youths out there that they can bring it back, because that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah,
I
and
hope
I
we
mean, I
can.
would go most of the years I grew up. I would go in Worcester, Massachusetts, like a small kind of smaller city. Definitely not like a main market, but it was so cool to see. Like, it would go to these like smaller middle of nowhere areas, and might be the only time you get to see some of these bands ever would have been at a Warped Tour. So yeah, I hope so too. I don't know if it's feasible. I know they just announced this pretty. I think Beartooth just announced this big kind of festival that's going kind of cross country with a good chunk of bands, not like a Warped Tour amount of bands, but I think it's still possible. It could potentially happen.
I think we'll give it some time. I think so. But back to Homesick, it starts out with one of pop punk's most recognizable songs, "The Downfall of Us All." It has so much to do with, I think, that intro, really, that da 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 da, that I think would not work without the crowd absolutely loving it, because it thrives on their participation. As someone who makes music, do you know in your gut when a song is going to definitely be a crowd favorite, or is it always a gamble?
I'd say you can try to gamify it to where you can add parts that will make it a great like live experience, but I think you have to kind of do a little bit of both, and you have to make it translate on the record as well. And I think that's what makes that such a successful single and such an iconic song, is that it translates just as well if you're driving in your car to if you're watching it live. Like, obviously it's completely different, but you do have to kind of like execute it really well. We have our like biggest song has a big kind of sing along part in the middle, and I know that, and I think a part of that is because people want that kind of participation and have something to look forward to when they go to see you live. So anytime you can do that, I think it's a massive win and an advantage. So I think that's a big appeal to it, and I think they executed that part so heavily. And who knows who came up with that or why they put that at the beginning of the song. But I think if it wasn't there, it would still be an awesome big song, but I think it would completely have changed the trajectory of the band if that like intro, that kind of like crowd participation intro wasn't there.
Which after all these years, it's still their #1 song on Spotify. And with that, how important is picking the right track to open an album? And is this something that has ever caused any kind of like tension in your band of like, hey, maybe some of you want this to start it, and you're like, I don't know, this one sounds a little better as the intro.
I think it's not as important anymore. I would think back in the era where this album came out, it was obviously still more important. There were still a lot of people consuming albums, and not that people don't, but this day and age, so much is put into singles, and I think just having a lead single that is massive. I think A Day to Remember probably had both, where it was the lead single and the first song on the album, so they had kind of like that advantage. But really, I don't think it's as important anymore. We have released albums where the first song on the album is just not even as streamed as a lot of other songs, because people just aren't listening to them in the full album format. So we put a lot of time and attention into like the song order when we do an album, but I think at the end of the day, at this day and age, it doesn't make as much of a difference. It just is a great way to like artistic touch, a way to put a special touch on the album. And I love when artists really focus on what song order and why and how it flows. So I think it's not as important as it used to be, but back when they did their album, I think it was a huge way. Like if you're just, giving that album a chance and you threw it in your CD player, like you're going to be hooked right from the jump. Where nowadays, people are probably discovering you from either TikTok or maybe through a Spotify radio, to where it's probably your singles that are going to be in the rotation anyway.
Very true. Very true. I didn't think about that. Like you maybe just need more of a hook for the TikTok and Instagram to catch you. Which I get sucked in with my algorithm. I'll send me a song and I'm like, oh, I like that. Okay. And then I go follow the band.
Exactly.
So that is a great song, but I do believe when you love something, you can admit its faults. Like I love Paramore is my favorite band, and there are some songs where I'm like, chop it up. I don't need it. So I want to start with your least favorite off Homesick. You already know what you are. What about that song just makes it just the least favorite child of the bunch for you?
I think for me, it's just one where when I approached this and re-listened to the album, it was just one that I would go. It was the last one that I would probably go out of my way to listen to, because I still love that song and I think it's awesome and has a place on the album. But I think it's one that just is a little bit less memorable to me. And on top of that, I really I kind of lean more to, especially on this album, the like pop punk side, and that's one of the more just kind of like heavier, kind of hard post-hardcore-y kind of songs on it. So it wasn't really just like, a least favorite in a negative way. I just had to pick one, and so that's kind of what I came up with, because there's so many iconic, memorable songs on the album.
Like your favorite, I'm made of wax, Larry. What are you made of? And with lyrics like don't blink, they won't even miss you at all, and I'll be there to watch you fall. It's clear this song ticks a lot of those like pop punk emo boxes, including that sort of feeling low, but also full of rage and wanting to seek revenge, which I think A Day to Remember does perfectly. All the good stuff. But when it comes to lyrics, is this band a favorite of yours, like in terms of like being wordsmiths?
I think they're really good at it's like almost the subtle diss track. It's like they're talking, it's like, and it's not necessarily about an individual person, but more like a group of people. It may be their critics or people who used to be big fans of them and they think they sold out, but they're really good at kind of that like subtle diss track. It's like we know they're talking about someone or something or some group of people, but it's not obvious in the song. But I love that Day to Remember is not afraid to like kind of clap back, and they also aren't afraid to write about their haters, or about how they're better than you or better than your favorite band. Like subtly they're able to say that, like and I love that they've never kind of held back from that, and they really let wear that on their sleeve. They're not just writing about like breakups and relationships and stuff like so many bands kind of fall into that. A lot of their stuff is about like, we're the shit and we don't care what you think about us, and we're going to be the biggest band in the world no matter what you think. And I think that it kind of plays into that with those types of lyrics.
And just a side note, because Jeremy McKinnon does have a beautiful voice,
Yeah.
So do you think like in another timeline, if he went on something like The Voice, do you think he could have won if he went that route? Like
I
a
don't know. I don't know if they would appreciate it as much as we do in our scene because he does have a great voice. I think his voice is one of the best in our scene, especially with the versatility. I think that's what makes him such a powerful vocalist in our scene is that like his ability to jump between singing and screaming. There's only a handful of guys I would put on his level. He's definitely like in the top 5 at that. But on top of that, his songwriting is, I think, what in combination of that with his songwriting ability, that's gotten better and better and better over the years. And the fact now he writes for other artists and he produces other artists and just that level of detail he puts into his songwriting. So I think like it wouldn't necessarily maybe translate to something like The Voice, but I think if he could easily be writing for country stars and pop stars, and I think if he wanted to have a career in like pop country music, he could probably go that route and have success there as well.
I mean, just look at Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
Came out of nowhere. Back to the lyrics. Your favorite comes from the album's closer. Again, they are really great with how they mapped out their album. It's the slow jam, if it means a lot to you. And the song really adds that extra emo flavor right at the end for me. And you love the line, "If you can wait till I get home." Did you come to appreciate that song more after you started touring?
I think definitely it's kind of cliche to obviously think about that, but definitely, and there's been times when I've been on the road and been single, and there's been times when I've been on the road and in a relationship, and definitely that song makes more sense when you're in a relationship and on the road. But I think just whether it's like you're touring or whether you're in a long distance relationship, that can speak to the soul and just about missing somebody. And I think that's kind of a universal concept that everyone can relate to. So even though this example in this song specifically is about, being on the road and missing someone back home and hoping that they'll be there when you get back, I think that everyone at some point in their life, if you've been in some sort of long distance relationship or been away from someone, even if it's just like going on vacation, right? You kind of have that longing and feeling for somebody. So I think it's incredibly relatable while also being just a beautiful, beautiful song, and the way it's composed and how it starts as one genre and kind of ends in another genre, and that power behind it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I like when these, like, I call them rah-rah bands. Go back to MySpace, rah-rah, like Story So Far, like Clairvoyant, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Such a beautiful song. I'm like, oh my God.
It was almost like a thing. It's like you have to have kind of the ballad at the end of the song. Everyone kind of felt it, but it's like great. Like a lot of these bands, one of my favorite songs is always kind of that ballad. And it also shows bands' versatility in that they can actually be down to earth, real songwriters without necessarily trying to have to impress you with their riffs or not having to impress you with the breakdowns and the screaming and the aggression and the speed or the tenacity, but being able to just impress you with their songwriting and vocal ability. And so it allows bands, especially in that era, to kind of show that other side, which was awesome. I know Pierce the Veil has some good ones. Pretty much like every band at that point had to have something like that, which is great.
It also gives you a break in the crowd too. There's like, all right, now we can stop the pushing for a second.
Yeah,
take a breath.
Yeah,
take a breath.
Great moment, especially if you're at a big outdoor festival and you listen to it, if it means a lot to you live. Like I've been in that crowd so many times, and it's a magical moment with just everyone in the crowd singing at the top of their lungs, and it's kind of a little bit quieter, so you can truly appreciate the crowd participation, where in a lot of these bigger rock songs, you maybe can't appreciate the crowd participation because there's so much chaos.
Yeah. That's my favorite moment of live music. It's when the crowd takes over and you're just like, I just always say, like, there's hundreds of thousands of people in this crowd and everyone's singing for a different reason, and that's just the most beautiful part of live music. Oh, love it. So this band obviously has inspired you in many ways that we talked about, but also behind the scenes, you noted that this record pushed you to reach out to producer Andrew Wade. Was that one of the most nerve-wracking emails you'd ever hit sent on?
Yes, I think it definitely was. We kind of were like thinking about all the things we could have in our back pocket when sending it, because we knew he had been recording some other local bands here in Orlando, in between like doing, national bands, big like national touring bands and signed bands and things like that. We knew he had been working with it, and it was definitely like, as far as being a band in Orlando, the like top shelf producer you could get, because there's other producers and there's some awesome producers here in Orlando, but like him be living here, having a studio here and whatnot was kind of that top shelf shoot for the stars, maybe land on our moon. And we had actually been playing some shows with his assistant Andy, who's now a very established producer in his own right. At the time though, he was kind of Andrew Wade's assistant and he was in a band and we're playing shows with him. So we kind of were like, hey, we were just playing shows with Andy and we were also talking to this band that you worked with. So we're like name dropping everything we could so that he would like read the whole email and know we're not just random people. But luckily enough, you know, when we sent it, we were definitely nerve-wracking, and it was definitely nerve-wracking, but we were like, hey, what's the worst that could happen is just like, you know, maybe we get to work with his assistant Andy, or he can refer us to somebody else. But he was willing to do it. We sent him our like original EP we had done with a different producer, and I think he just, you know, had some downtime and he was in the process of building his new studio, but he was willing to take on the project, and we've been going to him as our main producer ever since, going on close to 10 years now. So he's been a massive part of our sound, and it really just like really a Day to Remember, Homesick, all but the other Day to Remember records, and then, you know, him working on Neck Deep and Wage War, some of these bands that we really love. It was like a dream come true and like a perfect marriage for us. He's like one of the guys and really like a sixth member of the band who helps us with everything when it comes to what our produced music sounds like.
How do you think he's helped you the most, like you personally, like as a musician, when it comes to recording?
I think he's taught us a lot about songwriting. He's a prolific songwriter, and I think underrated songwriter. And as someone who's worked with him now for a lot of years on a lot of different songs, you know, when we'll bring him an idea and we'll see like we'll show him a chord progression and he'll be like, you know, the simplest example is him being like, oh, well, what if the chords were like this? And he plays the chords a different way. And we're like, oh, that sounds so cool. I would never think about doing it that way. And then I hear of those like these weird, like unique Andrew Wade chords that he, instead of just doing a normal G, he'll play it in like this way on guitar. And then I hear that in like a Day to Remember's music, or I'll hear that in Real Friends music, or I'll hear that in Broadside's music, other albums he's worked on. And I'm like, okay, that's like one of his stylistic things, is taking these kind of straightforward chord progressions that you may just have heard 100 times over, but now it sounds new and fresh and unique because he's adding these tweaks to it. So I think that's a massive thing for us. And then just with the lyrical content songwriting, he really challenges us to make things personal, make things real. And when we do kind of come up with those ideas, he really helps us flesh them out and develop them into what becomes the actual song. And there's been a lot of songs we write with him from scratch in the studio, and those songs sometimes end up being really successful for us. So definitely just like songwriting, because at the end of the day, it's going to sound great. He knows what he's doing, but really making sure the song can stand on its own and be as strong as possible is I think what we've taken the most from it.
Well, you always have to be happy you sent that email.
Yes, absolutely. No regret.
So I did want to talk to you today because I feel like there are so many like great new bands like Felicity that deserve the same like level and respect and notoriety that emo kids were giving bands back in the day. I think A Day to Remember kind of comes from the second great wave of pop punk, but I really feel like we're ready for a third wave, like to bring back Warped Tour, because while I do love an emo night, who doesn't? And always gonna appreciate these bands that came before y'all, but do you think that like millennials are kind of gatekeeping emo a little too hard with like the nostalgic trips, like when we were young, or emo nights, and not allowing the scene to grow, but kind of just fester in the past?
I think that definitely that generation sometimes is, and I'm as guilty of as anybody.
Me too.
Of just really being like, when I turn on my playlist and it's stuff that I listened to 10 years ago and I'm still just listening to. But I do think that like overall there's a like resurgence of rock coming, and I think it may be based around all these bands we're talking about, but there's some amazing new up and coming bands who are taking that and innovating it and making it new and fresh and bringing other genres and bringing in things that you would never see. And I think a band's evolution, like A Day to Remember with some of their latest stuff they put out, or like Bring Me the Horizon with the latest stuff they put out, like some of these bands are not just sticking in the past themselves as well. Some of these like massive bands, they're pushing the envelope, which is then pushing these younger bands encouraging them to push the envelope, which is awesome. So I see like a rock resurgence overall. I don't know how much this kind of like emo pop punk Warped Tour resurgence, I don't know if we're in the middle of it or towards the end of it. I know it's been going for kind of like 5 years now, and it's been awesome. Like I'm as guilty as loving going to an emo night as much as anybody else, but I do see kind of like just an overall rock resurgence, whether it be now bands like Creed having this massive comeback and Nickelback having this massive comeback to where now everyone's like, oh, I've liked you guys all along type of thing. And then just some like, Machine Gun Kelly putting guitars back on the radio. And I think there's going to be just more and more of that in the future. And rock, and a little bit even heavier rock, heavy music, going to be making a forefront, come back into the forefront with bands like, Spirit Box getting nominated for Grammys and things like that. I think the emergence of bands like Bad Omens and Sleep Token being these massive acts. Sleep Token just sold out the Amway Center here in Orlando, and the concert's not till September. So I think it's definitely coming, and it's going to be in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. But it's just so great to see that like real music with real instruments outside of country kind of making this comeback. And I think what country music had, that resurgence over the last 10-15 years, I think rock music, just straightforward American rock and roll, is going to be on that next wave that's going to start coming into the forefront.
I just wish the country resurgence was like more Garth Brooks like.
Yeah,
because I love 90s country.
I feel you. Yeah, and it all comes in cycles. It all comes in waves. And
yes.
Rock is next up on the ballot, which is awesome. And what's contributed to that is, I remember 10 years ago where rock, wasn't having the any type of resurgence. It was kind of just being left for dead, a few years before COVID. And then through COVID and coming out of that, all of a sudden, like when we were young, that's led us to have Warped Tour now, the entire brand come back, and things like Emo Night, and you go there and there's kids of all ages and younger generation there. And then TikTok is allowing like almost anybody to get their music out there and be discovered, and massive national acts like Machine Gun Kelly making pop punk music, and Blink-182 having this massive comeback. It's not just kind of the millennials that are part of that comeback. It's everyone younger than it too. So it's just a matter of time, and I'm just thankful that Felicity is going to be at the point to where we can really take advantage of that and be part of it. It's going to be really special.
But speaking of Felicity, we're going to talk more about what you guys have going on. The band got started back in 2015, dropping EPs. How much do you think you guys grown as a band since then?
So much. I mean, we grow every single day. I know for us back then, we were just thinking, we met on Craigslist and we were playing in our singer's garage and his parents' garage and driving them up the wall, and we were just saying, hey, it'd be cool if we got to the point where we got to play a show. And then we played a show, and then it'd be really cool to play like some of these venues that we're seeing bands that we love. We saw some of these smaller 100 cap rooms, 200 cap rooms in Orlando, and we would go see a band like Between You and Me, or it might have been 4 Year Strong or Sleep on It, or these kind of more up and coming bands play these venues. We'd be like, it would be cool to play there, and we got to have our album release show at those venues. And so it's been a constant level of growth, and it's been from us just wanting to constantly be better than we were last year. We kind of set a list of goals for ourselves every year around Christmas time, and then we look back every year at the goals we had from last year, and we see what did we accomplish, what didn't we accomplish, and then we try to analyze why we didn't, what growth we had, and we try to just grow year after year. And so really that's what's led us to the most amount of growth. But really we're most proud about if we're growing the fan base, and if we're making music that people are listening to all around the world, and is that overall fan base growing, and are we growing as people, and not taking anything for granted, and we're still having fun. And I can tell you that like we're probably having more fun than ever, all these years into it than when we first started.
Awesome. And again, you've been going on not a decade now, but for a couple of years, COVID did put a damper on everyone's regularly scheduled programming. How did Felicity navigate that time as a band?
So when we first started, we had the first couple years of us kind of just figuring things out and maybe playing some local shows around Orlando. And then we had a couple years of us really kind of grind mode where we had been releasing music and we'd been going on our first tours and building a fan base. And then COVID happened, and for about, like you said, 2 years, we really didn't release anything, play shows. We still like rehearsed a lot, and we did as much as we could behind the scenes to help grow the brand. But after that, it almost felt like we were restarting again. So we kind of treated that like a fresh restart, and we're like, hey, the people who love us and they stuck with us through that couple year break, they're not going anywhere, but we need to hit it harder and faster than ever, and act like we're just starting again from scratch. And it was rebuilding those relationships and rebuilding, connecting with our fan base. And by that point, TikTok had become a thing you had to do, not something that was just, oh yeah, like, you can be on TikTok. So we really decided, hey, we have to become a TikTok band now. And then that's now become, a few years later, our biggest social media platform, the one that we have the most success with, and the one that leads to probably most of our music discovery from people who discover us. So it was just about evolving and really just not taking anything for granted after that point, because you never truly know when it can be taken away.
Well, speaking of TikTok, that's, you can tell I'm old because I don't use it. The new album Mixtape for an End of the World Volume 1 drops on June 18th, and you have been posting snippets online like Instagram and TikTok. But as a whole, what was the driving force of that album? Was it the impending doom found in our country on a daily basis, or something else?
So really, we started working on this album in 2021. I know that's crazy. It's been about 4 years,
wow.
But this is also only part of this project. There will eventually be a Mixtape for the End of the World Part 2. So there's a lot more to come, but it's basically a collection of about 18 songs that we've been working on over these past 4 years. And pretty much the culmination of everything that in our life that's happened and how much has changed in the world over those past 4 years too. So at the end of the day, this is a collection of songs that represents a big chapter, a whole chapter of this band. And we wanted to think that like the end of the world is such a broad concept. You could take it literally with what's going on in the country, or it could be as literal as going through a bad breakup and it feels like your world is ending. And I know, to me, I've experienced that over these last 4 years, where it felt like the world was ending because of losing a loved one or a breakup or losing a job or whatever it might be. But it's really just the thought of like, this is a mixtape that you would make, like kind of like we remember when we would make mixtapes or burn CDs, right? Of just like all the music that represented you in this chapter of your life. This is the mixtape of Felicity over the last 4 years and all the different things we've been through, and it's our mixtape for our end of the world, whether that be all the bullshit we've been through. So that's really how it's interpreted, and then part 2 that is hopefully going to come out next year.
I love that. I love the idea of a mixtape. My first music blog was Golden Mixtape, and then this year for my friend's birthday, since we all met at concerts when I was in college, I made them all mixtapes. I had to buy a CD burner. Very hard to find those. Well, Amazon. And then I picked 4 songs that reminded me of them, 4 that reminded me of us, and then 4 I thought they would like. So
you'll really appreciate this, then. We're doing some limited edition physical copies for the Mixtape for the End of the World. And it's actually going to be all on cassette tape. So it's going to be a literal mixtape. And on top of that, when you buy it, it comes with a cassette tape Walkman, so you can actually enjoy it as a mixtape for the generation that never got to experience the real mixtape. I remember recording songs from the radio onto a cassette tape, and this is almost like kind of like trying to bring back that vibe. And then all the drawing on the tape and the cassette tape and the case is all hand drawn by us. So it's literally like we made you a physical mixtape, 1 of 1 for you. And there's only going to be 50 made, period. So they should hopefully sell out really quick, but that's just something we wanted to do. We want to go the extra mile to make this really special for the people who support us and believe in us, and that would be something of interest to them. We didn't want to just, throw this on a CD or say like, here's a vinyl. We wanted something unique that really would stick with people, and also a way you can consume it in a unique way that maybe a lot of these people haven't consumed music before.
Yeah, I have a couple of cassettes I bought and like I have no way to listen. Like I bought the Barbie soundtrack on
Yeah,
cassette.
that's
I
cool.
don't I don't have any way to hear it, but it's cute. It's cute to have. But
Absolutely.
fans are gonna hear more than those snippets when you hit the road with Fluorescence. I actually had tickets for Columbus and then the show was canceled.
Bummer.
So I got an email that said I got a refund and I was like, why? And I was so sad. I was like,
That
oh.
sucks. They're great guys. We haven't gotten to meet them in person yet, but it's one of those relationships where we've seen each other come up on TikTok and been in each other's FYPs and been liking and commenting on each other's stuff and watching each other just grind and grow to the point where it's like we're finally both kind of getting some respect and building our fan bases the same way side by side. And there's just so many people who discovered both Felicity and Fluorescence maybe around the same time and in the same way. So it's really cool for us to be able to do this run of shows together for our first times playing together. And then we also have some headline shows on either side of it. So depending on where you're at, which show you come to, you might see a Felicity headline show. We're going to play a few more songs, or you'll see our show with Fluorescence, which should be awesome. And all those little 12-second earworm songs that both of us have released over the years, you get to hear it. And I know that's what I love about this era of going to shows is like I'll go see Mag Park and I'll be like, oh, it's that song.
Like,
That's when it gets to that.
yeah, like I've heard those 15 seconds before.
And the rest of the song is just as good.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah.
You're like, phew. So before we go, I do have a quick speed round, a pop punk speed round, if you will. So we'll just go real fast. So if we took a date or a member out of the running, what band would you love to play guitar for if only a night on tour?
Oh man, that's crazy. That's really tough. Cause like I'm trying not to. If I actually like could make sure I knew all the parts, if I could know all the parts, okay.
Yeah.
I would say, um, uh, like Metallica would be insane just because the shows would be so massive and we'd be playing these massive venues and they're one of my favorite bands of all time. Like I told you, I grew up kind of with the classic rock and that led into Metallica. Metallica would be one for just the pure like badassery and the size of the show. And then the my backup pick, which would be my like personal pick, would be Coheed and Cambria, just because another band that I've loved since I discovered them when I was little and been obsessed with, and their crowd interaction and their fan base is so diehard. It's like going to a cult like meeting. It's insane. So there's just Coheed tattoos, and they can play the deepest cut off their tracks, and it's like Taylor Swift's concerts. Like everyone just knows every word to every single song they put out. So that would be my backup.
All right. And is there any band that played Warped Tour once upon a time that people would be surprised to know that you're a fan of?
I don't know about maybe surprised. I would say, oh man, not super surprised. I'm a huge. I mean, I like all the classic emo Warped Tour bands.
I'm thinking like the
Simple
2000.
Simple Plan. I mean, like everyone loves Simple Plan, but they're a little bit more of like the girly bubble gum.
They are I love them, but they are so
But
cheesy.
they are exactly. Maybe that's the word. I don't want to call them that because they're also
They're like if Mickey Mouse was doing pop punk.
Yes,
they're
exactly.
cute. They're fun.
And I see them at Epcot here in Orlando, Florida. They play at Disney every single year, and they play Disney songs pop punk style. So that's a perfect description. But they are just so good live, and they are such a fun show. And you cannot help but be like love their songs. Like their big hit songs are just so catchy and well written, and relatable. So maybe Simple Plan. I'm a huge Simple Plan guy, and I've seen them play. I've played same festivals as them. And I never miss a chance to miss them. But definitely kind of like maybe a little bit of a guilty or pleasure.
Yeah, I was like, maybe you'll go like a hello goodbye or the Academy is, something.
Oh, those are great too. Those are great too. Yeah, I think those are. It's just tough for me because those I don't like. They're not guilty pleasures to me. I just love them.
Yeah, I love Hello Goodbye. Oh God. When it was like the core of the one era, because now it's just like Forest.
I would say like another one would probably be Mayday Parade. Like not the most like badass, punk rock metalcore dude like I can come off as sometimes, but Mayday Parade, when you see them live, you're like, they rock so hard live. Like the songs are heavier, they have these guitar solos, everything comes out so much bigger than sometimes they do on the like sing-songy album from 15 years ago.
That's one band I've never seen.
Okay, well there you go. Now you got to go out of your way to try and catch them, because they are so much better live than you would probably imagine.
I don't remember if they played when we were young. Last year I went and I was like, I just want to hear Jamie All Over, because I do love that song, but that's just one I've never got to see. You mentioned Simple Plan doing Disney songs. So I have to ask, what Disney song would you want Felicity to do? Because I know that pop punk Disney album just came out.
Yes, I know, and there's like all of them. So Mag Park did Eye to Eye, I think, from definitely one of the Powerline songs from Goofy Movie.
Yes, they did Eye to Eye.
And they I think they would translate to rock music so well. So I know they've been pretty much done now by everybody, but I would say one of the two big Goofy Movie, either Stand Out or Eye to Eye from Powerline.
Nice. I know we're still waiting for a full Powerline album from Disney. Right? Oh, come on, Disney. So what album would you love to be able to hear for the first time again?
I would say, man, that's really tough. This is a little bit of a deeper cut, and I think it's one of the most underrated emo albums of all time, but it's Stories and Alibis by Matchbook Romance. And if you've heard it, you know what I'm talking about, just if you love emo music. And if you haven't, then you should go check it out. But front to back, it's one of the coolest, most ahead of its time emo albums. It's from 2003, I think. But front to back, it's just perfect. And I remember discovering it kind of later on in my emo music discovery, but in my mind, it's right up there with like Let It Unfold You by Senses Fail or Discovering the Waterfront by Silverstein. It's just like, it should be a staple. And just because the band, I think, broke up, before like, I don't know, maybe 2009, maybe something like that, because they broke up, it's just not, they don't have the staying power of the legacy that all these other bands have.
Yeah, it's hard when they break up. Like, oh, come on. And what 3 bands would you want Felicity to tour with in the coming year? Dream tour, 3 of them. Dream
tour. I would say it would be a dream to tour with Papa Roach. That's one of our absolute favorite bands, one of our biggest influence, a band that's done it all. Like, they've been an emo band, they've been a rap rock band, they reinvent themselves to be just a mainstream rock band, and then we're going on like 30 years later, and they're still just as relevant as they ever have been, and they're still cool, and everyone universally pretty much likes them, and you've never heard any drama about them. So the Papa Roach is up there. Let's throw A Day to Remember in there. We're gonna go A Day to Remember and Papa Roach. And I think the other one for us as a band that would be a massive influence, so I think this would have to be the headliner, would be Nickelback. So we go Nickelback because they're the most weirdly underrated band, because they got so much hate for so long, but just genius songwriters and awesome rock music. So Nickelback's gonna headline, and then A Day to Remember probably, and then Papa Roach, and then Felicity can be open in the small size 10 Jokerman font at the bottom of the flyer.
I mean, I don't know why Nickelback got the hate, because How You Remind Me is such a good song. It's just a genuinely amazing song. Oh, when they did to the breakdown at that, oh God.
Everyone's waiting for that one moment. Yeah. Everyone knows it, and it's just so big. And I think it became kind of trendy to dog on them and dislike them. But if you just could, Men in Black flash, erase your memory and go back and listen to their hit songs, you would just be like, all these songs are so massive, and they're bigger than all the other rock songs that we listen to because they're so good, and that's really all it comes down to. So definitely we're massive Nickelback fans here, unapologetically, and we'll never hide away from that.
And Rockstar, I always think of songs like that were on VH1 when I was getting ready in the morning for school. Rockstar, definitely top tier.
Rockstar, and also they have some really rocking songs like Burn It to the Ground. Anything off Dark Horse, they Burn It to the Ground, and they had Animals. They have these big massive riffs and double bass, and they really can get heavy too, which I think is like underrated. If you go to a Nickelback show and you've never seen them and you just know kind of their couple hits, you'll go and you'll be like, these guys can get really heavy and have some insanely complex riffs, guitar work, guitar solos, everything that you'd see at like a metal show. Like they can do at a very high level. They're just better songwriters than all the other bands on top of it too.
And I didn't know they rock so hard. Maybe I'll have to check them out if they come to the Columbus area. And lastly, for our speed round, along with Homesick, what other 3 pop punk albums would be like, maybe Homesick's not up there, but you're like Mount Rushmore of like pop punk albums? So 4.
That is a very tough one. I'd say let's go. Man, it's tough because I feel like we have to put a Blink-182 album just to honor the gods. So let's go. I would say, Enema of the State. Let's go Enema of the State by Blink-182. We're gonna go, for me, my personal favorite. That's not like maybe the most mainstream, is probably Life's Not Out to Get You by Neck Deep. It's for like a more like modern pop punk album. I gotta go All Killer No Filler by Sum 41 because that was the first pop punk album that I ever owned and I spent my own money on, right? And like you finally get to the age where you are willing to spend your allowance money or chore money on music. So I bought that one. And for the last best pop punk album of all time, man, it's really tough. I'm just gonna have to go with a personal one. I'm gonna go with maybe Finer Things by State Champs, another more kind of like modern one. I really like State Champs, Neck Deep are really 2 bands that really mean a lot to me, and those 2 albums I absolutely love front to back. I've listened to them 100 times over front to back. So we'll go Enema of the State, Blink-182, Life's Not Out to Get You by Neck Deep, Finer Things by State Champs, and All Killer No Filler by Sum 41. And that's specifically just talking pop punk. That's pop punk as a genre.
No Good Charlotte.
Oh man, they're great too. Definitely would be in the running on the list, not too far behind them. Love Good Charlotte.
So fun. I was so mad they didn't do When We Were Young and do their self-titled. I was like, come on guys, this would be amazing.
It'll happen eventually.
I mean, the first year they did When We Were Young, I was like, I don't trust it. I don't think it's gonna happen. So I didn't want to go. And then that was freaking best year at Paramore. Then I didn't go the next year, but I went last year. It was fun for the album one. I was like, The Youth is doing the album? Okay, let's go. Motion City. Okay.
Yep. Motion City. I went to the Motion City tour where they did that album, and it was absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna be mad at myself for probably not putting a Green Day album on it, but it's okay. I have to stick with what I said. But they would be probably the next band deserving to be on the Mount Rushmore, and probably Dookie has to be the album.
Dookie would probably get its own monument if we're being,
for sure, because it was the first
the
first pop punk album to be kind of mainstream, for sure.
And it definitely paved the way for so much more.
Everybody else.
So, and can you remind people where we can find you online?
Yes, you can find us and all of our hijinks at We Are Felicity. Mainly on TikTok and Instagram is where we do most of our damage, but we are everywhere. And we have our summer tour coming up with Fluorescence in June into July. We have our new album coming out in June 16th as well. And we are going to have pre-orders for all of our merch bundles for the exclusive Mixtape for the End of the World physical release with the cassette tape and cassette player. Dropping in the next week, so you can go to FELICITY'S.com if you're interested in grabbing one of those. There's only 50 being made, so you first come, first serve, and if they sell out super fast, then maybe we can do a reorder, but right now the plan is just doing 50 and individually numbering every single one, so super excited about that.
Lots of exciting things going on. Andrew, thank you for taking the time to talk to me about your album Crush, pop punk, emo, and so much more. And everyone, you can find all of Felicity's information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, along with some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, Season to Season, The Sip List, and Toontastic Journeys. You can go to idnmtrpodcastnetwork.blog to find not only Crushgasm, but all of the aforementioned really cool podcasts. Alrighty.